Welcome back, everybody. Therese and Judy here from the Kale Kids in Chaos podcast, and we are thrilled to welcome the wonderful Mara Fleishman from the Chef Ann Foundation. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about ultra-processed foods in our school system and how much the schools depend on them, the problem with this, and all of the things that the Chef Ann Foundation is doing to sort of overcome all these processed foods in kids' diets and make scratch cooking a thing. But let's start today because, as you know, just a kind of jarring stat: 70% of the typical child's diet today comes from ultra processed foods, which is a lot, and it's a radical change to what like our parents and grandparents grew up with, where ultra processed foods were not a thing. It was very much about scratch cooking. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that for millions of kids, school meals make up more than half of their daily calories. So, where these foods are coming from, if they contain artificial additives, dyes, sweeteners, things like that, that's very important. So, let's talk a bit about kind of your role, and what the Chef Ann Foundation is doing here, so we can set the groundwork.
Great. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. So my name is Mara Fleishman. I'm the CEO of the Chef Ann Foundation. I've been in this role just about 13 years now, and the Chef Ann Foundation has been around for going on 16 years now. What we do is we work in every state and we help school food programs move from serving more processed food to serving more freshly prepared, made from scratch food. This kind of comes after my career at Whole Foods Market, where I really learned about food production, high quality food, a lot of what kind of got me interested in learning that there are 30 million meals being served every day to kids in our country that are at times really poor quality food.
I would love listeners to appreciate the scale of that a little bit, like you're saying, Mara. So in my graduate program, I had a classmate, I did that program in Honolulu. And one of my classmates went on to be the director of all the child nutrition programs for the state, including the school lunch program. And that isn't just lunch. So I want to, and this also kind of hooks into what Boulder here in Colorado, what we just voted on yesterday, right? To support school lunch programs, but it's breakfast for a lot of children. It's lunch. It's after school food. There's a snack program and there's a summer food program for school kids. And I don't know how typical that is across other states, but this is huge. This is backbone for millions of kids.
Yes, that's true. I think people don't understand always how large it is, and you're correct with all of those school-related meals. The country spends close to $25 billion a year on food.
Mhm.
And if you think about that and you think about the food that's being purchased, the food that's being eaten, both of those acts are linked to outcomes that our society really cares about, right? How food is grown, how food is produced, its connection to ag, its connection to the environment. And then, with the kids, the health and nutrition outcomes and nutrition related disease that our youngest populations are contending with right now. So, what I say sometimes is, if you are a systems thinker and you are someone trying to solve for problems that our country faces or take advantage of opportunities that our country faces, school food represents both. So we have this opportunity to have some control around the meals that kids are eating through their school food program. They're a captive audience. They are there, and, for the most part, unless you get to high school and you have open campus and can go off campus. But we really have an opportunity to change the way that $25 billion is spent and the way it's ingested, and connects to the health of kids.
Yeah,
Right.
I think as we've all known about the obesity type 2 crisis that's been happening now for years. I think also part of what Judy and I like focus on is also like this effect on, mental acuity and mental health. I mean, that's the other piece of this. We have this rise in autism and ADD, and allergies, asthma. There's just been a cascade of things in the past 10, 20 years that have really like blown up. And there is a great amount of, consensus that a lot of this could stem from the food choices, the way the foods are grown and bioengineered ingredients and things like GMOs, chemicals in the food supply, aggravating a lot of these conditions in kids. And I guess like can you tell us a little bit about like what's the biggest myths about like what schools can actually do to get healthier food on the table? I know just from like bare minimum, having learned in my graduate program years ago that I think the USDA allocates like $3 or $4 per meal. It's like a very low amount of money. What can schools do to overcome the challenges around feeding kids healthy, fresh, scratch cooked foods when this is your budget?
Those are great questions, and I think there's a lot of confusion about that in our country too. So currently, the average federal reimbursement for a school meal or school lunch actually is about like $4.30. And that is baseline. So that's for, that's for a complete meal, and it is in isolation to any additional reimbursement a state might make. So for instance, California adds almost $1 to that to support their school meal production. Most states don't. Most states just have the districts work the program to the federal reimbursement. And the federal reimbursement is connected to kids who qualify for the free and reduced lunch program. Technically, coming from families of four who earn about less than $55,000 a year. So it's pretty low income, and there's no geographic variable to that, right?
Right.
So I mean that's a big issue, and why sometimes, there is some state supplementation. But the school food programs are looked at within the district as their own entities. So they are not always looked at as a component of school that where the district provides additional support, right? So it's like you have to make your money, you have to spend your money, you're your own entity, right? So they have to rely on the money they get from paid students, the money they get from free students, the money they get from reduced students. And that certainly can be a challenge in today's cost of food and labor market, world. However, it is institutional food production. So like the district in my hometown has 55 schools in the district. They serve about 15,000 lunches a day, right? And so you can create some efficiencies in that process. Now, with about $4.30 a day, you can't serve all organic, regenerative, food.
The things,
You
right?
can make choices. You can make choices. So in the district in my hometown, they have salad bars. Can they make a choice to have organic lettuce on the salad bar? What is the most opportunistic choice from an organics list to choose to have it from a cost and a contaminant perspective? Can they make a choice to move from serving a processed chicken nugget to serving a locally sourced poultry fresh chicken strip that they make from scratch? And how do we take that menu and mix it so that we can create some financial viability in the program? So that those are all ways you can mix and match and make school food work. The big hurdles are when you don't have some of the larger investments needed to create healthier, freshly prepared meals. And that's usually infrastructure and equipment, right? So those are big capital investments that are hard to find if you have, so the way that the district in my hometown works is they have a central kitchen that produces the food and ships it to the school districts, which we call the finishing kitchens. And then the finishing kitchens take the production the last 25% of the way, right? So, if they if they cut the local potatoes into strips for French fries in the central kitchen, they can send them to the finishing kitchens to put in their combi ovens and fire off so that the fries are crispy. So if you need to invest in both production kitchens and finishing kitchens, that's really costly. And you either need a bond or you need investment from your district, um, or a grant, to actually make that happen. Now, most school food programs have some level of equipment, but it's variable. It could be a lot of reheating equipment. That is what connects them to the packaged processed food.
And Chef Ann, did you put in that like sort of central hub did you create that? Is that what you guys go into school districts and you help do? Is you help decide like where that central hub should be and then what the spokes, where the food will be sent to? Like how is that part of your process that you work with school districts on?
Yes. So if we go in, so school food is run at the district level. This is also a piece of information not everyone understands because some people think, oh, well, this school in this district serves better food than that school in in this district. It's not true. School food is supported at the district level. And so if a district calls us and asks us for help, or if we get a grant to help a district, and we are going in to kind of help them create a plan, to move to serving more freshly prepared meals. We will do an assessment. Part of that assessment, we will look at all of their schools and all of their equipment and look at where we can create some production kitchens. It's not always one, right? So in the district in my hometown, for many years, it operated out of 4 or 5 production kitchens until they were able to get a bond to build the central kitchen.
Got it.
So we will go in, well, let's say a district has 30 schools. We will go look at the schools. We will see which kitchens could suit for a production kitchen based on equipment size, infrastructure opportunities, and distribution opportunities, right? So if you have 30 sites, you probably need a couple production kitchens. And if they are going to distribute to the 30 sites, you have to look at proximity and distribution routes. So that is something that we do when we go in and help school food programs.
Okay. And I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, part of this like push to get more scratch cooking into the schools is to eliminate things like, unnecessary preservatives, excess sugars or salts or fillers that help keep food fresher longer, right? So this is kind of the Whole Foods model too, like minimal additives, chemicals, ingredients to try and, because none of that's good for anybody, adult or child.
And Mara, I want to ask a question too about as you're working with the players and districts, and you kind of have to hope, or how does that work? Where it's got to trickle down to staff all the way down the line. And last time we were chatting on a podcast, and I mentioned a friend who works in uh, Arvada, and she's just pulling her hair out, seeing what is given to the kids. She's working in a room with kids with special needs, so a lot of it comes from the aides. They're just, I think they have a separate situation for how they're seated and eating lunches, and they're given all kinds of soda and garbage. And she said, I've got myself a little kitchen in my area that they get to work in with these kids on some ADLs, activities of daily living. And she's like, so I'm cooking them eggs, I'm cooking them bacon, I'm giving them some real food, and they function so much better. How much does that figure in? Like, where does Chef Ann Foundation come in to kind of work at, the level of at the school if there's resistance with staff, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Or just the labor issues in general, right? Like we know
Yeah,
that's a challenge across multiple sectors right now, and how do you make that functional? And
right.
how do you, train these people and get them up to speed and get them producing the way you want them to produce the product.
It's really interesting. So when you look at how a processed meal gets on a tray and gets out to the cafeteria, there is a whole system of dysfunction behind that, right? That ends up having this ultra processed meal on a tray in the cafeteria. And labor, we have found in the workforce, we have found is the biggest opportunity to create systemic long-term change. So one of the biggest pieces to our, when we go into a district, we kind of break down our assessment and the structure of how we work with these teams into 5 areas: food, finance, facilities, human resources, and marketing. And we feel like that system within the system is what needs to be looked at and refined in order to create a better program in the long term. And the labor part is a big piece of this. So one of the things is that historically we have an undervalued labor force in school food, right? It has not been looked at as part of a culinary path. It has been looked at as a fill-in job. It is historically the lowest paid positions in school districts. Um, Definitely there is some gender and equity issues going on in school jobs. And and we have a lot of people who have kind of just taken this job and, for the some of the feel good pieces of it, right? I can come in, I can give a child a meal, I can connect. I can come in for 3 hours a day, I can work on that. And what we try and do is professionalize this workforce and these jobs in this field because these could be amazing jobs and job opportunities. This is feeding our youngest generation. This is building the palates of our youngest generation. This is providing this kind of equity springboard for our youngest generation. And they actually have this power they don't realize all the time to create change. And that is a huge part of our programming that has really exploded. We created the first national apprenticeship program for scratch cooking and school food. It launched in California and it is now implemented in pilot in Colorado and moving into pilot in Virginia, New York, and Michigan, um, moving forward. And this is helping to recruit and train school food workforces. So we also have a huge vacancy issue in school food workforce. In California, the last report showed close to a 12% vacancy rate in school food jobs, which was higher than teachers. Uh,
Whoa.
so we are working with the unions in partnership to upskill the jobs, to create some support for differential pay with credentialing, and to create and train this workforce to actually prepare, cook, and not just cook, but like think about the production. And this is the culinary side, right? That is why we go from production to finishing. A lot of people maybe just have a production kitchen and then they ship out to their sites hot, right? In hot boxes. But ultimately, that food sits hot in those hot boxes for hours, and you are really limiting the culinary
Activity.
quality of that food, right? And
Yeah.
so we have to really kind of think about that. If we're going to compete with like, a processed French toast stick that was built and made to feel crispy even after it's like microwaved in a, in a bag in the back of the kitchen out there, we actually have to, kind of up level our culinary skills. And this focus on workforce is really taking off and kind of in a microcosm, like when we go into a district, one of the first things that we do is we have them move into chef or cook coats. Because
That's
that,
the part, right? That's the whole
yes,
theory. Part, look the part,
yes,
the part.
yes, they have to feel that what they're doing is of value. And that is a component of it. And of frankly, a lot of the reason why we focus on this is from my work in Whole Foods. I mean, if you think about Whole Foods Market, the workforce development component, which we didn't call it back then, but as as grocery employees, we all felt different about our jobs than a lot of other grocery employees, right? And there was a lot of yes, right?
And I forgot to mention, Mara and I know each other because we had both worked at Whole Foods. She is an old boss of mine from years ago. You know, back when the original mission was sort of in place. And I
Yeah.
think Mara, what they also cultivated at Whole Foods very well was this idea of a mission. All of
Yeah.
us who worked there in the era that we worked together at Whole Foods, we were on this mission to make the public aware of how important organic foods were, right? Because it was still early on, people didn't understand it. There was a whole thing like, oh, organics don't matter. There's no nutritional difference. Like, why would you spend more, to go shop at this place where the food rots in 2 days?
That's exactly right. And it's very in theory we were just a grocery store, right? Right? But the approach we took to team member education, um team member value was very different, and that's what we are layering over the school food workforce right now.
Yeah, it's amazing because it makes a huge difference when you all feel aligned in a mission,
It
working
makes
towards something else.
food.
The energy, the connection, the creativity, the passion for it really changes
Yeah.
what you're doing. And it's not just a job where you clock in, you clock out.
Yes, exactly. And that is like so a big piece of our apprenticeship program is they go through School Food Institute, which is these 11 courses that were created to help school food workers understand kind of the nuts and bolts of their job, but as it correlates to the opportunity of their job, right? What happens when you are able to make a mac and cheese from scratch? Well, let's look at the cheese sauce that is normally used in a school food program. Let's turn the label over. Let's look at the 35 ingredients that is in this cheese sauce. And then let's look at the 5 ingredients that you would use to create a cheese sauce to make a homemade mac and cheese. And then you can take the rest of those ingredients out of the bodies of these little kids. That is the power you have. And once we kind of get them associated with that opportunity, it kind of just takes off from there.
Yeah.
And I really want to, as I sit here listening to this, I'm just thinking of all the hundreds of families I worked with over the years struggling to feed their kids and kids with all different kinds of issues, and what a huge impact that would have, removing that 30 other ingredient list of noise, how it changed kids' behavior. And there's data
In
on this, right? So this isn't fluff. This is not fluff. This is really core stuff to how kids' brains and bodies function, how they focus, how they learn, how they relate to others. It's huge. It's deep. I don't want that to be missed either. This is so important to that what we're bringing up, right, for our next generation. It's really a big deal. I just want to make a plug for that.
It's
Yeah.
really true.
And I think, Mara, you had also mentioned that, like, when you can, you try to work on sourcing local, because local, that's the other piece of this. Like, organic is great and it's wonderful, but like the minute you pluck anything out of the ground or off a tree, right, it begins to lose efficacy, nutritional efficacy pretty quickly. So if it's traveling 3,000 miles, let's say from California, Florida, some of our regions where we do a lot of growing in this country, by the time it lands on your plate, certain nutrients like vitamin C, et cetera, are basically almost gone. And I think local is a big part of this too, because you want not just to get rid of all the additives in the food supply, but you also want to make sure that the kids are getting quality nutrition. So if you don't mind, like, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what you guys do with local, issues and barriers you face, because I know just from the work at Whole Foods, local is a challenge, right? It's this tiny scattered network and it requires a lot of work to bring it all together.
Yeah. It is. It's a challenge and an opportunity, like most things in school food. And when you help a district move its program to more scratch cook, you open up this opportunity to um, partner with local farmers and procure more food. Now, it is a opportunity both for the school food program, the kids that eat it, and also the farmers,
Yeah.
because farmers they have a lot of food, which we know about from our time at Whole Foods Market. They have a lot of food that is not retail ready, right? So, Whole Foods Market wants the best carrots out there,
Oh, awful. Right.
always beautiful, and we love them for it. It's a beautiful shop. But there's a lot of seconds,
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there that are a better crop for an institutional food program that also provide a stream of income for these farmers that is really helpful. So, again, if you think about a district serving a burrito, a processed burrito that comes in a bag and, has all of the things packaged in it, there's might have 30, 40 ingredients in that burrito, none of which the district has the opportunity to procure locally, right? And when you break that down and when you make that burrito from scratch, you then have the opportunity. Now at $4.30, you can't always, buy every piece of it locally, but you
Right.
can choose certain ingredients. So the district in my hometown um, purchases local beans, right, for their burritos and their nachos. Their beans grown in Boulder County, Colorado, and the purchase of these beans every year is incredible for the farmers and truly adds a lot of nutrient dense food into the kids' school food program. There's a continuum to this work, right? So when we go into a district, there's this like, it is not short-term change, right? You need at
Yeah.
least a 5-year strategic plan to help kind of get you onto this. So for instance, school districts get a certain allotment of commodity foods. Commodity foods are foods that come from the USDA, and a lot of times they are foods that are ultra processed. And so they have to place their commodity food order or their USDA food order in February for the following school year. So like imagine like extrapolate that out,
Kind of
right?
panic, right?
Imagine this process, right?
Mhm.
And if you're working with farmers and you want to have, and you say to them, hey, we want X amount of your beans for these, for the nachos and for the burritos on, the 6-week menu cycle going through, the half of the school year, then this is what we're estimating we're going to buy from you. And they have to plan for that too. So it's this process of helping to move the needle on these things and helping them set up helping them start with a small group of farmers, helping them set it up. But to plan for some bigger opportunities, one of the things we're working on is there's 15,000 school districts in our country, right? Most of them are medium and small school districts, right? The LAUSDs or Chicago Public Schools or Boston Public Schools, those are kind of fewer. And these small and mid-sized districts have a lot less administrative support, and their volume purchases are smaller. So we have started this program to build what we're calling VAPCs, Values Aligned Procurement Collectives, where we are grouping districts together to
Oh,
help them purchase more local regenerative and organic food together and help them build some similar parallels in their menuing so that they can do that. And that first is starting in California, just launching right now, and then we're moving into Arizona with that.
wow. That is
That's fun. That's fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah, it's exciting.
Mhm.
amazing. And what about, I mean, I love, the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, the concept, the idea behind it. I think we need change on many fronts there. I'd love to get your perspective on, are they serious about change? Is it PR talking points? Like, where are we really at with that, in terms of execution?
Being that I'm in this space for 13 years, I have to stay optimistic. That keeps me going every year. And so, I'm going to meet people where they're at. And frankly, the Maha report that was just released a month ago-ish, maybe 2 months ago, by the federal administration, says a lot of the things that we have been trying to say for a long time.
Forever.
Right? Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it is calling out ultra processed food. It's calling out the daily calories that kids eat from ultra processed food.
Sugar, yep.
It's calling for change. I think what we're waiting to see is what backs up this report, right? How can we fund this report? How can we fund the ideas in this report to help create change? Because as I laid out at the beginning of this podcast, there is an investment that's needed in order for districts not to pull out those processed French toast sticks and serve them. We need to help them build their infrastructure in their kitchen. We need to help train them on menu planning, procurement, financial modeling, labor development. But it's a huge opportunity. So I don't know. I guess my answer is I don't know. Right now, what I would say is that I have not, I like the report. Let's fund the ideas in the report. And one of the things that we're seeing is things like before the report came out, the administration cut a $660 million allocation for local procurement to schools across the country. And so that for me doesn't fit with the report, right? So waiting for the actions to align with the kind of some of the top lines of that Maha report.
Yeah, local's always been a challenge. People are not, they don't fully understand the importance and the awareness of why. Like you're helping the farmer, you're helping get fresher food into, bodies. Like there's a lot to it, but it's expensive and it's harder to do and all the points you talked about. So, that is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I think you're right. But again, if we're spending close to $25 billion a year on school food, and we are trying to, take this on both sides of the aisle, if more of those dollars stay in local economies and support local farmers, as opposed to going to big food companies, you
Correct.
are going to uplift, these state economies. And I think that's in everyone's best interest.
Absolutely. And also, like, unfortunately, the farmers don't have the lobbyists, right? Like, you have all these big food companies that have very large lobbying efforts. And this is, part of the entrenched establishment that I know the current administration likes to say, like, we're changing things. But this stuff is hard to do. It's a little bit like turning the Titanic.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
yeah. Hmm.
And Mara, I would wonder if you could comment a little bit, giving context on a little bit of a timeline here. So this whole school lunch program started 50 odd, 60 odd years ago, right? And there's been quite an arc there, quite a trajectory where it did evolve into really kind of a handsome arrangement for big food.
Hmm.
And this is kind of what you guys are up against, right? You're kind of wrangling that back to the people and to local farmers and actual good food. And Chef Ann Foundation has been around a while.
Hmm.
And yeah, so in the trajectory of the foundation, what does that look like? Where do you see people's awareness rising or uh, even local government awareness rising, or where's the glimmer of hope there, I guess? Like you say, it's you got to stay positive.
Well, I actually think there's a lot of hope right now. So yes, the school food program's been around for about 50 years, and obviously it has morphed and changed as the eating habits of Americans have morphed and changed. One of the most monumental changes into the school lunch program happened in 2010. And that was the first time there was nutrition guidelines created for the school food program. So that was under the Healthy Hunger for Kids Act, and it was championed by then First Lady Michelle Obama under her Let's Move initiative. And that created nutrition targets for sodium, saturated fats, protein, calories, all sorts of things that were connected to the dietary guidelines of Americans. And we have not been able to reauthorize the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. It was supposed to be reauthorized every 5 years. So we've not been able to reauthorize it because of partisan politics. But the the governance is still there, and the guidelines do get updated based on new dietary guidelines. So for instance, right now we is the first time we're restricting sugar in school food. You haven't seen that, but there are things like there's no dietary guidelines, or there's no nutrition guidelines as it relates to fiber in school food, right? So fiber targets are not there, which is like a big issue with ultra processed food, right? Because you definitely
No fiber,
strip the fiber out of the food, right? And we
and
know
fiber is
that
good for gut health, and gut health affects the whole systemic body health, and it's dominoes, everything's connected. So yeah.
That's right. That's right. So there's still this opportunity, with this monumental kind of child nutrition authorization, the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. It's been, it has changed. Big food companies had to change the way they were RDing food for schools. It's required 51% whole grains. But what they did is they took their chicken nugget, they took the breading on it, and they made it 51% whole grains, and they still have all the other fillers in it. So I think we've made this, like, step. What's next is the reduction of processed food. And that's what the Chef Ann Foundation was founded on. So we've been talking about this for a long time, right? Since 2009 when we were founded. That's why we were founded, is to reduce processed food in schools. We didn't call it ultra processed back then. That's a newer term now. Um, we called it processed food. But we are seeing more districts wanting to engage in this work and increase their freshly prepared meals. Also, while we are not seeing a lot of the ideas in the Maha report funded federally, we are seeing there is a uptick in discussion about ultra processed food in our country right now. And that uptick is creating more attention for school food. So we are seeing lawmakers on both sides of the aisle start to bring bills to their state government to reduce ultra processed food in schools. California was the first to pass a massive one, and Governor Newsom signed it into law about a month ago, which was called AB 1264, which has a trajectory to remove ultra-processed food in schools over the course of the next a decade or so. And you're seeing bills like this pop up in different states from different legislators in, Arizona and West Virginia. So we're starting to really understand and see that. Um, but ultimately, there are some baseline things that we have to work on in order to maximize this. And one of the baseline things is universal free meals, something that just passed in Colorado yesterday by vote, to continue support of extending free meals to all kids. So, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, the federal reimbursement is for kids who are on the free and reduced lunch program. Um, and I talked about uh, that annual income threshold that they have to meet. But what we found out during COVID, during COVID, the federal government funded school meals for every child. A lot of times it was remote feeding, but it was, there was a lot going on in the country. We didn't know who was losing their jobs, keeping their jobs, how we were making sure kids were getting fed. And what we saw was a considerable uptick in kids eating school meals. And what we know is that we shouldn't be putting a income threshold on kids' access to nutrition, right? We don't say, okay, you know what, you make this amount, you don't get a bus ride. You can go pay for your own bus ride to school. We make sure that all kids have access to be successful in schools. They have a ride to school, they have a book at school, and they should have a meal at school. And so while there are, I think, 8 states that have passed universal free meals for all kids, the federal bill that has been brought to the table has not been passed. And that is essential as a foundational component to school food reform.
Yeah. And Mara, just going back to something you said earlier about how across the aisle we have different, legislators and congresspeople bringing, sort of bills forward for, sort of a lot of these components that you're looking for, are they taking the initiative themselves, you think, or are they just responding to the constituents? Because a lot of what I have always like sort of been educated on, and even years ago when I did my graduate program, like the idea that like if you want to change school food, it starts with the parents. And the parents are the ones who have, parents, teachers, administrators, etc. Right? You have to press for change. You have to press for scratch cooking. You have to lobby for ingredient bans. You have to scramble together and find resources that will help you figure out how to navigate this crazy Byzantine system with layers that are not necessarily intuitive. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Or is there truly like institutional change happening now where like that groundwork, has sort of been laid and now the government's kind of coming in to take this to the next level?
I think that change happens from a number of opportunities. I think parents are one of them. I was the parent, I mean, when I worked at Whole Foods and I went to school lunch with my then kindergartner and um, was just, appalled at what was being served, I started, you know,
Paying attention.
me just going to the district with a parent group and trying to create change. The problem was, as I was doing it, we just kept getting um, kind of, you know, okay, but we can't do this. Okay, but we can't do this. And one of the big issues was the food service director at the time didn't know how to create a scratch cook program. And so we just kept getting told there isn't enough money. There isn't enough money in the reimbursement. We don't have enough this. We don't have enough that. So there is a lot of people that have to come together to create change. I think one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of these bills right now is because traditionally school food has felt like more of a left-leaning initiative. And with the with the uh discussion about Maha and with the discussion about ultra processed food from a more right-leaning administration, I think you're starting to see that politicians on both sides of the aisle are now able to bring these types of bills to their constituents. And I think, frankly, when I am meeting, so if I look at the congressman who brought the AB 1264 in California to the table, Congressman Jesse Gabriel, a big part of it is his passion for food equity, nutrition, nutritious food, less processed food. And so I do think a lot of this is coming from these. I think that these politicians that are bringing some of these bills to the table, they truly believe in this. Now,
First,
I also think that they've probably experienced connection with parent groups in their communities, with other groups in their communities that have also, kind of supported them in this. But I think you're seeing a lot of it. And there has to be a lot of people like, I've seen where a district where a superintendent is incredibly healthy, eats, really well and wants better, less processed food in their schools, but their food service director isn't on board. Either they don't know how to do it or they just, they believe that you should serve kids what they want to eat. This is what we hear a lot,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like
Oh,
it's
right.
it's like, well, they don't want that. They don't want that, they want this. They want this. And so they believe that we should serve them what they want.
This is
And
Therese and I are nodding because this is what, just one-on-one with parents and families, and you're trying to shift a kid's intake, and they're like, well, he won't eat it. I'm like, and your
yeah,
point is, because
as
you
the
got to
adult,
move that needle somehow, right?
right, as the adult and the parent, like what's best. The kids can't always
Right,
show.
right.
But with that said, the idea that like especially in our culture in America, every time you go out to a restaurant there's a kids menu with the same five foods that are all
Right,
white or fried, very low nutritional value.
right,
These kids become accustomed to like, hey, this is my food, this is what I am supposed to eat and want. And then you do get on that hamster wheel where it is
right.
very challenging to get them to not eat those five, chicken fingers, hamburgers, french fries, tater tots type of
so
food.
it's so challenging. And, this is the dance that we play with districts when we go in to try and help them. A lot of times they are say, okay, let's bring on this scratch cook menu item. We'll bring on this, scratch cook chicken strip, but we're going to menu it against you know, you know, this frozen burrito that they love or something else.
Thank
And,
you. We're
you
going to
know,
take it intentionally.
right. And we'll see which one they like. And we're like, that's, if you hold up a piece of broccoli next to a Dorito, I think we know what they're going to choose, right? And that is not, I don't think that's the way that we go. And so I think we're really, it's this evolution of, kind of education. And so one of the most amazing opportunities that I have now that the Chef Ann Foundation is pretty much the largest nonprofit nationally that helps schools move to more scratch cooking, which is unreal. But because of that, we have more resources now to actually take a lot of these kind of like education strategies and put them into play. We show up and present at state superintendent meetings. We show up and present at state PTA meetings. We do legislative briefings. We show up at school food professional conferences, and we try and uplift a lot of this education that it is possible. Part of it, I think, initially was, are you judging us for what we're serving?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
are you judging me? I'm here serving these kids, making sure they have a meal. Are you judging me? And we needed to make sure that like people understood that's not the case at all. This is not about judgment. And even, sometimes with parent groups, when I'm speaking to them, they say, well, that's great. That's great that you want to change the mac and cheese in school and serve, have them create this fresh sauce and, instead of serving this, but I can't do that at home. I got to open up the box. I've got two jobs. I got to serve it. And what I say is, you know what? Then you should be supportive of getting this in schools. If you
Less
can't
work
do
for
it at
you.
home, yeah, then like here's a load off your back. Like let us reduce the amount of ultra processed food your kids eating in schools. School food also lives in this system of huger issues, right? Cost of living issues, cost of food issues. When two parents have to work and sometimes two jobs, in order to actually live in our country, the reliance on processed food is going to continue. Um,
Right.
and so, you know, there's problems, problems, and problems.
Yeah. Takes a lot of work, scratch cooking, to make it happen
Mhm.
when you have two working parents and, all the effort that, activities and school things that, kids require. So that was very understandable.
And those are skills that have sort of receded. I think it's certainly in the path of the years that I was working with families. I remember a certain point, I don't know about when it was, maybe 2005 or so, where I began to understand families don't know how to scratch cook anymore. And I would give some instruction or suggestion or direction, and they're like, "Well, I don't even know how to do that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I got to remember that, yeah, as we're moving toward people just needing it to be fast, fast, fast and process stuff." And so, yeah, it's kind of pervasive, right, all through society. So I can really appreciate what you're saying about talking to staff, and they're telling you, "Well, look, I, I'm I just want the kid to eat it, and I'm trying to do this." And yeah, you can't judge, and that's definitely a path to what more success for sure.
And I guess I know, Mara, we have to wrap because you're busy. And you've given us a lot of your time this morning, and we appreciate it very much. But if there are parents or administrators listening, if there's one thing that they could do to help move school food forward in their school, their district, big or small, like what would you want it to be, or what do you think it should be?
For parents, we have a parent advocacy toolkit on the Chef Ann Foundation website that was based on my experience in trying to change school food as a parent. And really, what it kind of breaks it down into three steps. And the first step is really about getting educated. So a lot of parents want to create change in school food. They show up with all these demands. Why can't it be organic? And I think when you are trying to create change and you're working with the people that are executing the program you're trying to create change with, you need to show up with as much education as you can. You need to understand, you
Their
know,
buyers, yeah.
yeah, you need to understand what their financial limitations are. You need to understand the compliancy of their school meals, what they have to do, about the commodity food program. So we have this all laid out. It's, we have a lot of links that parents can just start to first educate. And then they really need to understand what their school food program looks like, right? So, what is their menu? What is, show up, have a lunch with your kid, like really kind of look what school lunch looks like. And then from there, I think there is a lot of opportunity to start getting educated about what is happening across the country in school food. There's a lot, our newsletter shows a lot of districts across the country that are executing different types of meals. So it's just starting to kind of get educated there. And then, you know, if there is will for change in your district, if there's not will for change, it is so hard. Someone has got to want to champion it. The superintendent, the food service director, someone. Otherwise, it does tend to be really, really challenging. But what we do say is the best first step to changing your school food program is a salad bar. So we have been granting out salad bars to schools since 2010. And a salad bar, once you execute on a salad bar, you're able to expose your district school food program to fresh procurement, fresh prep, fresh execution, and start getting your kids accustomed to eating fresh food. And so if there's one tiny step to make, that's it. And we have an application open on the Chef Ann site at all times for districts to apply for salad bar grants.
All right. Well, I know it's time. Any other last minute things? Judy, you have any questions, or Mara, anything else?
Oh, this has been great. I really appreciate your time, Mara. I love what you guys have been doing, and just thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is big work and well,
Yes.
keep up.
Thank you guys both for elevating the discussion. And this is the kind of thing that that I like to do because it kind of educates people about what the opportunity is. And I think that I think that as we look at all of these things that our society is concerned about right now, I think school food is a potential solution for a lot of them.